And Football at 4 is brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. This hour of the show, it is brought to you by Taco Cat. Got a craving for tacos? Check out Taco Cat, 8 South Essex Avenue in Margate. We are 1 hour to first pitch tonight. You can listen to the game on 97.3 ESPN. Before we get to Geoff Mosher, who's in the house for Football at 4 today, let me get you the Eagles keyword this hour. The Eagles keyword for this hour. Remember, I'll give you the keyword. Then at the end of the hour, I will ask you for the keyword. Have the keyword, your name, and where you're from, and that will enter you for a chance to win Eagles 49ers tickets plus tailgate passes for the Philly Sports Trip tailgate party. We're going to throw them in as well. So club box seats for Eagles Niners plus the tailgate passes. That's all with this keyword for this hour, which is Mailata, as in Jordan Mailata. Remember that name, Mailata, with your name and where you're from. All right, he is the host of Inside the Birds podcast, which you can find on all podcasting platforms and on their YouTube channel. Just search Inside the Birds. He's Geoff Mosher here on the Sports Bash Live for another edition of Football at 4. And Moshe, the Eagles kind of came, they saw this high-flying offense, and they shut her down, man. They shut her down. So what's the bigger story? That the Eagles' defense shut down that offense, or that maybe the Dolphins' offense isn't what we thought it was?
Well, I'll still say it's the Eagles' defense. I mean, they clearly came in with a game plan, and even if you think and I think the Eagles match up well against the Dolphins. The Dolphins had a loss to Buffalo, and they didn't score a lot of points in their game against New England, and both of those were road games in the Northeast, right? So you saw a pattern that their offense is a little bit different when it has to travel and play a team that is known for having a good front four rush like the Patriots are and like the Bills are, and the Eagles are probably the best of all those three. So I felt that the Eagles had a good matchup in the trenches there as long as they stopped the run and put Miami in second and third and longs. And the reason I thought that would be good was because Miami, as you just said, their offense is so three-step drop reliant and so one first read reliant. Tua is not a guy who gets to second and third read very well, and that offensive line does not hold up very well. But if you're in second and long, you can do some things to take away or bracket a guy like Tyreek Hill and try to get Tua to get to those other guys, which he couldn't do. The Eagles did a great job of it. But nonetheless, Mike, you still got to stop their run, which a lot of people forgot was also number one coming into the league, and the Eagles did a really good job of that. And that's not easy because they got a lot of speed with Raheem Mostert there. But the Eagles had a great plan. I thought they set the edge really well in the run game, and I thought they wrapped up and made tackles well, and that was very, very key for them to keep Miami behind the sticks.
Yeah, you mentioned the Miami offense, 181 yards per game on the ground, and they essentially were a non-factor in the game last night. The Eagles up front win with their defense. But what about the plan in the secondary? Because obviously you look at Tyreek Hill, 11 catches, 88 yards. He had a modest yardage amount there. It seemed that, hey, let's let Waddle catch the ball. And you just said you got to come up and make tackles. And that was one of the things I thought was impressive. The fact that they didn't really give up. They had the one touchdown to Hill, which was a nice throw, but they didn't give up a lot of big runs by Tyreek Hill.
That's correct. They generally kept the big play grounded, which is what you have to do against the Miami Dolphins. And I credit Sean Desai, especially because that he's got his third or fourth slot corner of the year playing in Josiah Scott, who just came back to the team this week. You got Eli Ricks in and out of there as well. You have your safeties rotating, including playing Mekhi Gardner, who's an undrafted rookie. There were times that Terrell Edmonds was playing a linebacker type of role instead of a safety role, as they went with 2 and 3 safeties. So he had to play a lot of different personnel, which honestly he's had to do all year. So it wasn't new, but to get against this Miami team, that can be difficult because you need to communicate. You need to know your keys. You need to know your assignments. And they did a really good job. And you know what? He wasn't scared either. That 3rd and 8 touchdown that Tua threw to Tyreek Hill. He blitzed on it, and I think he felt like we're up in this game. We're controlling the line of scrimmage. Our offense is doing a really good job of owning time of possession. Let's try to speed up Tua's clock here, because that's another thing. If you speed up his clock, even trying to get to that first read can be very difficult. He's just so itchy to get the ball out of his hand, and they just had a great play call for that blitz. But in general, I thought Sean Desai did a good job of mixing up his looks and coverages and not making it an easy game of pitch and catch for Tua and Tyreek Hill.
Well, and how much of that motion? I mean, we got to really highlight some guys here. Josh Sweat, 2 sacks, 2 quarterback hits, played on the other side of the line of scrimmage seemingly all night. I thought Jordan Davis was like unblockable. He doesn't come up in the stats, but my gosh, he just, takes up so many people. Carter got a ton of push. Reddick, but I thought Sweat and Reddick on the ends. We saw Nolan Smith get a tackle. He had a factor in the game. It was one of the games. That's the blueprint for the Eagles, right, Geoff, is pressure from the guys up front, and we can win on the back end.
It is definitely one of the reasons, Mike, that, I had picked the Eagles to win the game, and I thought that was a huge advantage for them up front. My thing was, if you can stop the Miami Dolphin run game, like I said, and put them in second and third and long, you would then be able to really do some things in the pass rush. And that's exactly what the Eagles did. And you're right. By the way, Jordan Davis, that's 2 games in a row now where he played really well. It kind of got lost in the Jets game because they lost and turned the ball over 4 times. But Jordan Davis played the most snaps of his career against the Jets. He played 28 snaps last night. So that was 57% of the defense. So you're seeing a major, major turnaround with him from last year as far as A, being able to stay on the field with his conditioning and play longer, and then B, when he is on the field playing longer, he's very impactful, very effective, not losing out on his technique. He had a bad game, I think against Washington. That was not a good game. But since then, he's played really well. And I thought, like you said, you got to stop the run. You got to, make sure you're eye candy, you're disciplined. They're going to motion. They're going to try to get different guys the ball in the run game. But the Eagles' front four, no matter who it was, as they rotated, was dominant. They did their jobs. The linebackers, I thought, had clear paths to the ball carriers, which was very important. And that, there's that Miami offense, I think, is not going to wind up averaging 38 points per game. Like I said, it's a highly schemed, highly one-read centric offense. And if you're good enough in the trenches, and by the way, Miami also committed a lot of penalties that put them behind the sticks too.
Yeah.
They had a touchdown negated by a left guard hold, but that's because the left guard had to hold because Josh Sweat beat him pretty good off the snap there. So that's a tip of the cap to the Eagles. And that's how the Eagles win games. It doesn't matter who the opponent is. The Eagles will always go into a game thinking they've got the better personnel in the trenches, and 9 times out of 10, that's going to win them the game.
Yeah, I both sides of the lines, I think, for the Eagles, obviously. We talked about all core in the week. The Eagles are the more physical team. The Dolphins are the more high-flying. We talked about a lot. Why are the Dolphins' offense high-flying and the Eagles not? Well, the Eagles scored 31 points last night, Moshe. What do you think clicked offensively for them?
So I thought the Eagles did a really good job of getting back to basics. I think it helps that the defense that they faced in the Miami Dolphins, presided over by Vic Fangio, is not too different than the defense that they play, right? Everybody plays the Fangio defense now. And what we know about the Vic Fangio defense is they're going to put 5 guys up front a lot. They're going to play a lot of 2-high safety. And that means you've got to work the middle and work the edges. You have to work your short to intermediate passing game. A Fangio defense will not let you beat it over the top, okay, until it has to be, right? Until they've got to move a safety up every once in a while and show you a 1-high look. And you did not see the Eagles take a shot downfield until the fourth quarter, after they had run the ball decently, after they had thrown the ball to Dallas Goedert and Devontae Smith all across the middle for about 3 quarters. And then finally, when Jalen Hurts saw a little bit of a safety rotation and one guy come down and you have one safety high, he took a shot to A.J. Brown, who made a ridiculously good catch down the field. That was really their one-shot play, though. Everything else was methodical. And that did 2 things, Mike. It helped them, A, get back to basics and move the ball and own time of possession and control the clock. and B, it kept the ball out of Miami's hands. Now, I don't think they went in saying we have to play this way because we're scared of Miami's offense and we don't want them to have the ball. But I think it was a byproduct of what they were doing offensively and sustaining very long drives that kept the ball away from Miami and fewer opportunities for Miami to just call that one play call correctly like they did on their touchdown to Tyreek Hill and make it a closer game than it needs to be. Because to me, I look at this game and the score was 31-10. They held Miami to 10 offensive points. The other 7 came on an interception return. You look at what the Eagles did offensively. They had a 12-play drive, a 9-play drive, a 12-play drive, an 8-play drive, and a 13-play drive. That to me is when the Eagles are at their best, when they are mixing in the run, the short pass, the RPOs, and they are dominating the time of possession, which they did against the Dolphins. Not 2-1, but close to 2-1.
Yeah, and the physicality of the Eagles, obviously they didn't run the ball great last night, but they did run 34 times for 99 yards. It's just 2.9 yards a carry. Gainwell, 8 for 16. He's getting 2 yards a pop. You got 4 yards from Swift, and then, of course, all the Hurts, tush pushes are in there. He only got 1.9. Yep. But the Eagles didn't run it a ton. I mean, they didn't run it great, but they stuck with the run. It reminds me a little bit of what Washington did against Philadelphia the year before on that night game where they just ran the ball. Not great. They just stuck with it. And the Eagles stuck with it, and then the touchdown that they scored late, they took a shot down the field. I guess it was one that set up the touchdown, but they set themselves up for a couple of plays in this. I thought they did a really good job. I know Brian Johnson's been getting a lot of grief. A lot of it's red zone oriented, but I think he did have a good plan of some setups last night.
Well, you just look at what the Eagles did situationally, right? You're talking about Brian Johnson and the play calling. The Eagles, unlike most teams, know that when they're on third down, Mike, they're really on second down, right? Because they're going to go for it on fourth down. So I sort of ignore third down conversion with them, and I look at third and fourth down conversion. I combine that knowing that third down is really second down and fourth down is third down for them. Last night against the Dolphins, they were 8 of 16 combined third and fourth down, which is 50%. And I'm pretty sure that there was a third down kneel down. So really, if you call it 8 for 15, that's over 50%, whereas the Dolphins were 4 of 13 on third and fourth down. So when you're 8 of 15 on third and fourth down, moving against a pretty good Dolphins defense, it shows that you're doing what you need to do. And obviously you saw the tush pushes. I thought their third down offense was good because it's set up very easy, makeable. I don't want to say easy, but makeable for them fourth down conversions, which they were able to do to keep a lot of those long drives going.
All right, Geoff Mosher, Football at 4 from the Inside the Birds podcast. Getting Slay back, I think, obviously shows, but you had him on one side, Bradbury on the other. But I want to get your thoughts on what Eli Ricks did last night in the game and how maybe he kind of changed the complexion of the Eagles' defense on the back end.
Yeah, I know he's been working at the slot for the first time in his career. Andrew DeCecco does a great job for us on InsideTheBirds.com. He does a weekly diary with Eli Ricks, and some of that stuff is just sort of fascinating, kind of behind-the-scenes look at a rookie, right? But Eli's been dropping some good knowledge and almost some scoopage there. He's been telling Andrew about how he's been working at the slot and how he expected to play in the slot along with the week before outside. And sure enough, he has. He brings a nice physicality to that position, Mike, because he's a physical
I wish for the
corner.
Amazing new iPhone 15
It's
Pro.
not something he's done before, but he seems to have adapted pretty well. I'm looking forward to seeing how he did on the All-22 to see what kind of tells I get from that. But I think he's a guy who's going to earn himself a little bit more time here.
Oh, listen, I'm looking forward to what you see on that All-22 because he seemed to be a guy who was aggressively playing Hill last night. He was like, hey, I'm going to get up here and I'm going to play you pretty well. I thought he did a real job with some physicality there because keep in mind, no Blankenship last night, no Justin Evans. You're playing with Sidney Brown a lot and Terrell Edmonds. You were down to like your third and fourth safety last night. Plus, you're down to what? Your fourth or fifth corner, slot corner, and you're going against the highest scoring offense in the league. I thought it was just a great effort by the defense. But having some of these guys step up and make plays, Slay gets the interception, and I think he got the game ball last night coming back from the injury. You could have had real problems in that secondary last night that was kind of, negated by some guys that you didn't probably think were going to have big games.
Yes, and this would be Exhibit Z of this year of why Howie Roseman will always say, if I build in the trenches, if I have a ferocious pass rush, if I have big, nasty defensive tackles like Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, it's okay if I've got deficiencies on the back end because that helps that pass rush. But those guys also, you have to give credit to the college scouting staff of finding, undrafted players like Eli Ricks and Josh Jobe who come from good programs and for whatever reason fell through the cracks, but have good physical traits and characteristics, play in the SEC, a very physical brand of football. And you've seen that with both Jobe and Ricks. They're guys who are not afraid to play with their hands. Sometimes they're going to get called, they'll be grabby, but they're physical and they're ready for the challenge. They don't seem deer in the headlight. Mekhi Garner, who played at LSU, so good on them. That's a good find. And your point on Slay is great. I mean, I thought Jason Avant made a great point about this in ITB pregame show. He said there are a lot of guys who are banged up at the cornerback position who look at the schedule and see Tyreek Hill on it, and they say, you know what, I'm still a little banged. I'm not really ready to return, okay? Darius Slay said, I'm playing this game. It's an important game, even if I am a little banged up. And by the way, that interception that he had was the Eagles' first takeaway since what was Tampa Bay, week 3 or week 4? I forget already, but it was since the Tampa Bay game, which I think was week 3 or 4. Three. That's a lot. For this Eagles defense to not have a takeaway in that long amount of time, it's obviously, they were +4 in turnover ratio after 3 or 4 weeks. They were -1 for the season after last week against the Jets because they turned the ball over 4 times and didn't have any takeaway. So it was good to see. And by the way, Slay was not – that ball hung up there. Slay had to come from across the field. He was smart enough to know where to be in his spot to be able to make that interception. He wasn't defending that I think it was Mostert who was down there trying to catch the ball. But either way, good on him and good on the Eagles to finally get another takeaway.
And I I love what's happening the last couple of weeks. You're starting to see Reddick get his groove back. I thought Sweat was a game wrecker there, those two guys. But, you see the difference of what this line looks like with Carter not there last week and Carter there this week. The stats don't show, but, man, him and I think Davis, we talked about him a little earlier, but I think Davis is becoming he's kind of maturing every week here.
Yeah, well, the thing with Jordan, Mike, is that, and maybe it's coming even quicker than the Eagles thought. When you draft a guy that high, right, you're not drafting him to just play first and second down and be a monster against the run. You can draft a guy in the 4th or 5th round for that who weighs 350 pounds. You were drafting an athletic freak of nature who is supposed to be able to, on passing downs, when you're not in a 5-man front, you're in a 4-man front, like go slide over to the 3 technique and, rush the passer or at least bull rush a guard to create some space for somebody else, right? And you're starting to see that he's got not just great power and strength, but he's developing some pass rushing move. He's using his hands, all right, which is something great interior defensive linemen do as a pass rush technique. He's starting to develop that and look more like a guy who's well-rounded and not just a big monster in the middle who's just going to clog a gap or two.
All right, Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds podcast. This Eagles team, I want to get your thoughts quickly on what you saw from Jalen Hurts, and obviously some speculation that he wasn't 100%, but the way he played that game last night, based on whatever he was ailing with last night.
Yeah, I didn't even really, he's obviously, I think when you watch Jalen run this year, something looks different about him. Not as explosive, right? Not as dynamic, especially in the first few weeks, but, he'll go down a little bit quicker, and wasn't sure if that was because of you sign a big contract, you're not trying to miss any games from injuries, and you're trying to develop more the passing game more. But, he guts through so much, Mike. And if it's a knee or whatever it is that bothering him, you might be able to tell it by the way he's playing, but you almost expect him to just gut through it anyway, and that's what he's doing. And he's still putting the ball where it needs to be in the passing game. So we'll just have to see how he kind of manages anything he might have going forward.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on what this week looks like, because obviously Sirianni did hint last night that, hey, he's a tough guy. Whatever, he's going through, I don't want to speak for him, but, that was evident that something was going on there, and we'll see how he kind of comes off at the other end of the week later on here as they get ready. We get past Miami. Washington on the road, then that gauntlet of Dallas. You do have a bye. Kansas City, Buffalo, San Francisco, Dallas, Seattle. They've got a bunch coming up, and they got to get themselves healthy. They're starting to come around a little bit there. But, man, an interesting game last night where I don't know, would you say the defense was the story of the game last night or the fact that they scored 31 points?
No, I think 100% the defense was the story. I mean, because obviously the Miami – you're talking about a team that was averaging close to 40 points per game that scored 10. So I expected the Eagles offense to be able to move the ball against the Miami defense. They did a great job. It's almost like the Jets game was sort of where the offensive line got handled. That's the outlier. So I expected the Eagles offense to come and rise to the challenge. And I just thought the defense needed to really you made that point. There was sort of brawn versus finesse, and they just needed to show it, and they did.
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought the defense – I had 31-27. I guess I gave the Dolphins offense a little bit too much credit. I thought the Eagles would bounce back after the loss last week. And sometimes, most, you need that loss to kind of tighten the screws. You know, you got things in your house that they're in place. You just need to tighten the screw on that the light switch plate sometimes just to get it closer to the wall. I think the Eagles needed to get that screw tightened a little bit after that loss, and they looked like they played with a little bit more purpose last night.
Well, one thing Clay Harbor and I talked about in the post-game show that I said most impresses me about the Eagles under the Nick Sirianni era, especially in the last 2 years, is response to adversity. When they lost that Washington game last year, they had to go on the road the next week against an Indianapolis Colts team that was really trying hard. They were struggling in the record, but their defense wasn't bad. They were trying to fight and claw with Matt Ryan to stay in it, and that was a close game if you remember. And then the Eagles in the second half kind of took over with their ground game. And I think they won that game 17-16. And some people were like, oh, what, you didn't look like yourselves. And I thought, you know what? Coming off a loss, you did everything wrong against Washington. You go on the road and you reestablish your ground game. You win 17-16. You get your path righted. That's good response to adversity. And I thought that last night was an even better example. You lose a game against the Jets. You turn the ball over 4 times. And you're not even – You're playing not the Indianapolis Colts of last year, but you're playing one of the top teams in the NFL and this high-flying historic offense, and you come out and you just dominate them in the way that they did. And make no mistake, I mean, again, to me, this game is 31-10 more than 31-17, but I thought that was great response to adversity.
Geoff Mosher, everybody, from the Inside the Birds podcast. Yes, I was watching Clay and you last night on the Inside the Birds post-game show. Very good insight by Clay Harbor, as always, and, of course, all week long here on Football at 4. And it's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the moment, whatever the game, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Check out Geoff Mosher and the Inside the Birds podcast team on all podcasting platforms and on their YouTube channel. Just search Inside the Birds. All right, Mosh, good to see you, bud.
All right, brother. Go Phillies.